Hi, I'm Damon from Joie. I'm going to show you today the Joie stages and how we use the newborn insert and remove it and adjust it accordingly as children gradually grow. So insert is used primarily and only when used in the rearward facing position and mode. So we've got a little test child here. So of course before we try and get him in, we want to have lengthened the harness. So lengthening the harness, very simple. Depress the button, finger below the pads, pull forwards and downwards to lengthen. Pads will only come out so far, so always best to utilise underneath the actual pads itself to extend to the fullest extent. Take the belts at that point over the side, so we're keeping it nice and flat, and it's then ready for us to load the child in there. As we've got those out of the way, like so, what we can then do is of course pop the little one in there. If we are coming inside from into actually installing where a vehicle roof line is very low, we've got the belts here, sometimes it's a matter of just dipping down with an elbow or something to post the child in. Of course we can do that either way round to get the child in there under the roof line and beyond the belt itself. Once we've got the little ones into the vehicle, we always want to start by getting the shoulder straps in the correct position, ensuring that we've got no twisting as we're feeding the seat belts up through there. We take those belts across, meet in the centre, so they just overlap ever so slightly, clip that in to the buckle system, and then most importantly is feeding the slack away from the child's lower clothing. So start off by pulling upwards so that we're gaining all the slack away from the lower limbs there, and then of course we can just pull through the slack here. Double check with 2 fingers, so take 2 fingers, wiggle and pull here, and it's best to try and check on both sides. If the child isn't sitting centrally in the seat, we'll then find one is looser more so than the other, which will indicate the child isn't sitting centrally in the seat. If we're not sure, use our fingers or hands as a guide, so we can place our hands at the side to see if they're symmetrical distance wise from each side of the actual seat itself. Now if the harness is too loose, that's not too bad, but if it is, of course, again just pull, tweak, perfect. Now this little one's simulating roughly 6 months, so at that time we're starting to get towards the limits of the headrest section. This will stay in for a lot of children to around about 6 months to 9 months, and at that point then this section will simply detach to come out. Of course we wouldn't tend to do it with the child in there, but literally just 2 press studs at the very back of the seat there will remove the head pad out, giving the child then greater room and movement around there. But there's no set regime as to when that comes out, just when it is the most suitable and opportune time. The lower section here will be used to at least 9 months and possibly up and beyond 12 to 15 months depending on the child's size. And as you can see here, that's helping with the child's angle, so it's keeping the child at a more sedated angle, which will of course help keep the child's head back. Now, getting the child out, the best practice, don't just undo the buckle to start with. If we undo that straight away, we'll end up twisting the belts and possibly hurting the children as we get them out. So depress the button, finger below the pads and pull again both at the same time. As you can see, we can make that nice and long easily. Eject the harness, and now we're barely moving the child, we can get that harness so it's now ready for them to go back in the next time. So it's basically getting us ready for whatever clothing the child may be wearing the next time we come to the car. Kind of climates, it can be changing throughout the day, and of course different clothing on, off, etc. And now we're ready to of course remove the child straight out. Now when it comes to the stage that the child is growing and we're ready to remove the insert, all the harness routine is exactly the same as when the insert is actually positioned within it. But of course we're removing that and the child will just sit onto the belt itself. That one's a little bit small, so I've got a larger child here ready that will just lift the headrest up to utilise for the bigger child. Now as the larger children are sitting within the seat itself, what we always must ensure is that of course we've got the headrest and harness systems at the correct position. So when rearwards facing, we want the harness so it's level or slightly below the child's shoulder. So on this stager's seat, we'll position that there, so we've got the harness position just slightly below the child's shoulder so it's coming up and over. Once we've got the headrest adjusted, we can then just guide the seat belts back into place over the child there, like so. Meet them together again, clip into the buckle, pull upwards towards the roof, just ensuring that we've got the child again sitting centrally if necessary. Just double check, make sure that the child is sitting centrally in the vehicle seat. As we've fed that seat belt through there, we can now just feed the slack back through the one pull system. Pull up towards the roof, pull again, do the double check, make sure that both sides are even, and we're ready for the road. Pads should always be pulled downwards, so they're more towards the edge of the shoulder and the centre of the chest system on there. And off we go. As the child gradually grows, of course we can adjust if we place them in and decide that they have suddenly had a growth spurt, and very quickly adjust upwards accordingly. Now this will stay in this mode without the insert, used rearwards facing, all the way through to potentially 18 kilograms before we move on to the next grouping. Thank you for your time today.